Hello everyone. So today's video is going to be a little bit different, and I normally talk about negative things that happens on the internet, but today I wanted to talk about something more positive, and that being the Steam Deck. Yeah. So just because my content is always not about me not showing images of my face or anything, at least not anymore, is it going to be a little bit different than my normal review or anything like that, as I don't have a script necessarily, but I just have a few bullet points that I wanted to get through about my first couple weeks with this Steam Deck. So for those of you who are unaware, or don't follow my Twitter, please follow at @GamePango21. I did manage to get this Steam Deck, I think about 2 to 3-ish weeks ago, and I've been playing it non-stop and tinkering with it with as much of thing as possible. And there's several points that I wanted to get through to people just because I think it's really cool, and I've also run some weird tests that I don't think anyone else other than someone maybe in my position have run yet. So let's get through some of the experiments, some of the things that come with the Steam Deck, as well as a full comprehensive review, starting off with the actual physical deck itself. So, to start off, the deck itself comes in a very nicely packaged box that, a lot of the Valve products that they currently make also come with. If you've never ordered a Valve product before, the unboxing experience for most of their stuff is oftentimes very good. Especially with the Steam Deck as of now, because when I received it, it had an entire place of where your everything was going, as well as it came with a nice hard carrying case, which seems to be included moving forward, which I like. And while the storage option is a little bit weird on the back, I do think that at the very least, it's a good place to store some of the bigger objects. If you're going to store, say, like a USB drive or some SD cards back with this strap bit, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. But the hard case is nice. Yep, the hard case is nice, and very much so protective of everything, with nice felt cutouts and insides, and even comes with a little thing to help kind of push the Steam Deck out, so long as you keep it in the proper location. Again, it also comes with these zippers, which no one's really mentioned this yet, but they are they seem very strong, as well as a nice padding, but they also have the little ring things that you would see on luggages to allow you to, say, lock up your Steam Deck if you really want to protect it even further. Again, you can probably buy like bag locks or something that fits through those little things, or just zip tie it, but I wouldn't really recommend that, as those can be easily broken. But it's another interesting layer and a nice security which I really like. It also has a handle, which, again, super strong and very comfortable, especially for the Steam Deck size. Now, for the Steam Deck itself, of course you have you have the standard button array of Y, X, A, and B, as well as a D-pad, 2 trackpads, 2 joysticks, a left and a right trigger, as well as a bumper, as well as 4 programmable buttons on the back. Standard stuff that comes with, say, a Steam controller. But where this differs from the Steam controller is that this also comes with a touchpad, some speakers, and about the same power as like a mid-range gaming laptop. Or I've been comparing it to the previous gens of PS4s. And in this form factor, it's super nice. All the buttons feel very premium, and even the plastic feels good. Of the times that I've dropped it, I really have been very careful to drop this thing. I wouldn't recommend, if you're going to show this off, to show it off in the case, because it will fall out. That's actually how I dropped it on accident. So place the case down, or at least the hard case down on a surface, and with the strap facing you, and you should be able to open it up fairly nicely. Of course, there's also chargers with USB-C. It also has a headphone jack, which is a nice feature, as well as an SD card slot for more storage. It's also interesting to note that you can actually run games off of the SD cards, but I'll get into that more later in the video. It's also ventilated very nicely. It does manage to get warm if you tend to run it for a long-ass time, but the battery life is definitely one that is more or less not as good, but still okay. I've heard from other reviewers and other people that they would have a battery problem. Of what I remember, he said, to kind of fix this whole battery sensing issue, you're just going to have to press the power as well as the plus button, which will enter it into a specific mode, allowing you to then just leave it on and then have the battery fully fully go out and then charge it all the way back up fully. But I haven't had that problem, at least not with my unit, so maybe it's fixed for most of them, and that just seems to be a more rare-ish problem, at least not for what I got. I, of course, am only talking about my version, which is the mid-range 256 storage unit, and some reviewers have said, oh, why would you, pay different money for different amounts of storage? Well, for one thing, he didn't mention the fact that the 256 as the higher end models actually have NVMe hard drives. Now, an NVMe hard drive is different from a standard hard drive because it's usually, if I'm remembering my computer parts correctly, it's actually a faster hard drive read and write disk rather than anything else. At least that's from what I remember, where the higher end stuff has like higher end parts in it, and the storage itself seems to be faster, at least from what I've been told through their marketing material and stuff, and from people who definitely know more than me. One of the things that also really surprised me is the fact that they actually put speakers on this thing. It's really weird to have speakers on a handheld device this small. I mean, I have speakers on my laptop and on my other computers, but I never thought in that time that the speakers this low would actually be this high quality, at least from what I've heard. And again, even with my own personal experience, yeah, these speakers are very high quality, even though they are not that big, and they're probably not the most expensive thing in the world to add, but to have that as even a little special detail for those people who really want it is really cool. So yeah, the fit and feel is nice, the everything here is very good, as well as the disassembling. And we'll get into the actual gameplay and computer parts next, so yeah. So, the actual gameplay of this Steam Deck is fairly straightforward. You have joysticks for movements, different buttons and things. You can even use the trackpads and various other forms of, and really customize this thing out. Not only that, you also can utilize Steam's Steam Community cloud saving thing, where you are allowed to not only adjust this to your liking, but also post it to the community to allow other people to copy your same control scheme. This is very good to have that in specific games, or to have that for specific emulation properties or stuff like that. It is always super fun to play this, but I've never really needed to adjust any controls because I usually just use the standard that comes with it and just learn as I go. That's just more or less a personal me thing that I like to do, but considering that you can play everything from, the lowest end of emulation of Atari games all the way up to the highest end of Elden Ring, which, by the way, has a green check mark, which is impressive, and you can run that game for 2.5 hours, which might not seem like a lot of time, but considering the fact that you are pushing this thing at 30 frames, or sometimes even 60 frames depending on how you do it, it is incredible just how much power is put into this thing. Not only that, it is still a fully serviceable and actually repairable device of a computer, right to repair. I always love when a company like the Valve, or any company, makes certain that you can actively get this thing repaired, so that way it can last you a quite a long amount of time. For something like this, you can easily swap out certain parts, get upgrades to certain parts, but I wouldn't personally recommend that unless you absolutely know what you're doing. I would say that the only thing the only thing for the more, traditional people is that if you have a 60 gig version, unlike me who I bought the 256 gig version, if you have the standard $300 version, to swap out that storage as much as possible, or to buy just a lot of SD cards. Another thing, since we're talking about the storage as well as the SD cards now, of course that you have the SD card, and you could actually run a lot of games off of them. I don't necessarily recommend running at least Steam games off of this personally, but other people have tried it, and other people have actively, said that it works just as good as running it off of a standard hard disk. I just prefer the hard disk that comes internally with the Steam Deck. I would just much rather delete games like I do on my normal computer, but the SD card slot, in my opinion, is best for one thing, and one thing is best for one thing in particular, and that being emulation. You see, I always had a problem with emulation, not morally speaking to say that it's not illegal, but more or less that I had a problem with the fact that it just felt like it's a little sketchy to my eyes. And to have something that I can more or less kind of abuse in such a way like this, and it can take everything in stride, is really what the kind of device that I've been wanting. This product itself is perfect for emulation, not only for the fact that you can actually get various emulators on the Steam Deck just with the snap of your fingers, but you can also get a variety of them of people that have already made packages and things that can easily be loaded onto the Steam Deck and actually works with SteamOS, which is freaking awesome. For example, I can play things like Mario 64 or even the original Mario Kart all on the Steam Deck without any problems. I've been currently playing through some Legend of Zelda, as well as some other older games that I just never really thought were good. I just never really had the opportunity to get to. And on the Steam Deck, they run flawlessly. For things like Game Boy games, I was never big into a pixel art guy, and it does kind of stretch the pixels out in such a way that it kind of looks like you're blowing up a particular screen of a Game Boy Advance game. But in all honesty, on the Steam Deck, it looks beautiful. I cannot stress how good certain Game Boy Advanced games, or even certain pixel art type of games, look fantastically on this Steam Deck. I wouldn't say that one of the ones that I did actually test out was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, which was apparently on the Game Boy Advanced, and that one looks very crunchy. But for a first-party Nintendo game like the Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, 100% this looks so beautiful even to today. But yeah, emulation on this thing is absolutely fantastic. Not only can you emulate everything under the sun, so long as you format your actual SD card, but you can also, again, load ROMs or other games on it and swap it out like it's actually a Nintendo Switch. Which, I will say, a lot of people that I have talked to mistook this for a Nintendo Switch, but I always correct them saying that it's a computer. And because it's easier to say that it's a computer rather than it's a Steam Deck, because they're then like, well, what the heck is a Steam Deck? And I think that more or less comes with how new this is and how very little people have actually, outside of the sphere of, say, everything else, comes to. But yeah, I love the thing about this is, again, it is a fully serviced computer. 100%. Again, like I said, fully serviceable. iFixit themselves have a lot of the same parts and tools and things that you need to do for it. I'm not even sponsored by them, but they have been working vigorously to make sure that you have the right to repair this thing, which I am 100% behind. And again, not only that, this can also work in a desktop mode as well as with other things through its USB-C, and they're eventually going to make a dock that works perfectly with this, but as of right now, some of the third-party stuff will still work with this. I have hooked it up to one monitor in particular through an HDMI hub, and it works good. I wouldn't say that it's the best thing in the world, at least not right now for the one that I have, but shop around, make sure that you read the reviews, and make sure that you know exactly what you're getting into when you have this. Having a USB-C is okay, but I personally think that maybe one USB-A or one standard USB would have been nice, personally, but that is a super duper minor nitpick, like so minor that it's not going to break anyone's back. USB-C is still fast enough, and so long as you get the proper... And again, USB-C flash drives, I actually have bought 2 of them because I lost one at some point, but I have managed to find it. But so long as you get a USB-C to a flash drive, which I have again 2 of, I would recommend the SanDisk. I will probably leave a link to the Amazon in the description. It's an American link, but it still is fantastic. And again, the USB-C, at least the SanDisk ones that I've played with, work with this thing flawlessly. Again, it also has a desktop mode, so you can use it standardly, and you can even hook up mice to it. I had a little bit of problem with mine where I hooked up at some point and it just stopped working. I think that that's more of a problem with the USB hub rather than a problem with my Steam Deck, but I can't be certain because I didn't do extensive testing with this. Now, let's get into some of the weird experiments that I've been doing with the Steam Deck, starting off with, again, emulation. I found that I have way more emulated games on the Steam Deck rather than games that I can actually play that can be emulated on the Steam Deck. I think that this more or less comes down to the ROMs that I'm using, or the ISOs, or some of the ways that I'm unpacking information, at least through the Steam Deck and the EmuDeck ways of this actually processing the information. So it might come down to the fact that I'm just using the wrong ROMs or the wrong implementation of it, or for some reason there's some disorganization that it's just getting confused and it's not providing all of the games that I'm putting into it. That, or it just doesn't recognize some of them and therefore can't help in that whole process. So yeah, I don't think that that's a problem with Steam Deck or a problem with EmuDeck. That might be my own personal problem. There's a lot of moving parts with it, and I personally think that it's more coming down to human error rather than anything else. The second thing that I did, which was a very weird test, was Discord. First thing that wondering on my mind was, well, can I get Discord on it? And surprisingly enough, so long as you look it up appropriately, you can easily download Discord on it. I thought it would be much harder to look at, but looking through some various similar Linux things, you can easily get a flat pack to load up Discord on the Steam Deck, which, let me just say that it does actually use Linux rather than Windows, which again means that the Steam Deck itself is Linux based and not Windows based, which some people like, some people don't like. But I've used this, and let me just say I'm a Windows guy, but this might make me convert over to Linux, at least for certain situations. This is so perfect in the way that it operates, and it is so easy to implement specific flat packs as well as emulation, and it is definitely one that I personally think is 100% useful because, again, SteamOS and Proton and things, which don't always work, but again, for the majority of the times that I've had, it's worked flawlessly. Now, to go back to the weird experiments, I decided to then do something else weird. So I plugged in a pair of Turtle Beach headphones, the ones that I'm currently using to listen to the majority of my things on my computer, with an actual, not with the headphone splitter, but just plugged it in with the actual cable, because it comes with like one that splits it off into two for other computers. This one only has the one, and I plugged it in, hopped in a Discord call with a buddy, and, well, it worked. Not only did it work to allow me to hear, but it also worked to allow me to speak, which is fantastic. That is 100% awesome. And not only that, I then loaded up a game of Astroneer, and then shared my screen while playing Astroneer. And also, the buddy that was in the call with me then hopped into my world, and we only played for about maybe 5 to 10-ish minutes, but this thing handled it all very nicely, and even in some capacity better than my current desktop that I'm using, at least in terms of my voice, as far as my friend said. It is amazing that you can not only stream your game, you can not only play a multiplayer game that might not be heavy on the CPU, but is still a multiplayer game, and be the host of it, as well as be in a Discord call, all from just this singular device. This was without me even needing to plug it in, by the way. It was running fully on its battery, fully wirelessly, and I was able to walk around my home and play it easily enough to that extent. I'm not sure how much it killed the battery, but I just know that it was at, I believe, 80 before, and then when I left the game, it became to around 60. So make sure that you're near a wall outlet again. The battery does seem to be the one thing that's holding this thing back currently, but at this current moment, the fact that it can even run all of that all at once while still being able to maybe do it for another hour or so is incredible, at the very least, to say that. I've heard of also people running these as with like recorders, as well as downloading OBS off of Steam is a very good option. Again, I would say to download OBS as well, just in general. Finally is another weird experiment, and I have said that a lot of people have called this a switch, and it's not only just adults that call this a switch, but also kids. Now, I recently got a job, which is one of the reasons why I am currently not uploading as frequently as I would like to, but the job is actually paying me money, which this is not. But the job is me working with kids. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, but just so you know, I have brought this to my job, and I have allowed the kids to actually play with it. And while in some of the smaller kids' hands, like kids that are 2, 3, maybe even 5, have had some troubles like moving around with this because they don't understand it fully, it was very easy to plop this in the hand of, say, someone who is going into elementary school, maybe 3rd or 2nd grade, and they are easily able to understand this. And one of the kids would even ask me to say, hey, can I play Cuphead, because I have Cuphead downloaded on this thing, and he was able to pick it up and play, even after the 2nd time, pick it up and play easily. It's really cool, and again, is a fully serviceable computer. And most of the kids understood that, yes, this is a computer, and it made me smile when someone said, hey, he's playing on his Switch, but another kid corrected him saying that this is actually my computer. And again, it's really cool, because, yeah, kids are going to be the best judge of character. They haven't destroyed it because they know that it's expensive, and I make sure to say, hey, don't break this because this is my thing. But again, I wouldn't hand this to, say, a very, very little kid, some kid, again, between the ages of upwards of maybe 6 or 5, I wouldn't say that they are the best for this type of device, but say ages 7 and up, go ham with them. They easily know that it's not heavy enough for them to really complain about anything in that sort. It's very easy to pick up and play to allow them to, maybe even pick their own games and play it with relative ease. While it is a little bit small in my hands, it's very big in other people's hands, and I just have big hands in general. But it was really cool to see that not only did the kids understand this, but that this can be given to a kid, then they won't necessarily break it. Again, that might be because I personally have made sure to talk specifically a lot to them about how much expensive this is, but to just basically have this even as an example of how form factor a computer is makes some of the things that I explain really cool to some people, because they're like, oh, well, that's just a Switch with extra steps. No, it's my actual computer, which, again, I've hooked up to various objects and things, and it's still kicking. Yes, it's only been a few weeks, and it might start showing its age in, like, several years down the line, but in all honesty, this thing is solidly built. So, let's get to the conclusion. The conclusion of this is very, very simple. The Steam Deck itself is a robust machine that, in my opinion, is not a replacement for your standard gaming laptop, at least not anytime soon, but is a much, much needed side grade, at least in terms of maybe getting people into Linux gaming. With Valve's insistence that Linux itself should necessarily be a competitor to Microsoft, it shows just how much effort they are putting forward to this. And if you can, do see about looking into getting one of these whenever they become available. Some people might be trying to sell them secondhand, which I don't know if that's a good option, because some people might try to scam you out of it, but so long as you're buying from a reputable source, again, or buying directly from Valve, once again, they become available, it is 100% worth it in my personal opinion. It was so worth it that not only did, when I talked about it to a friend, did he reserve his own copy, but he's now kind of waiting on his. I got mine a little earlier, but at the same time, he got the maximum amount of it, and let me just say, this right here, this Steam Deck right here is 100% worth the money in my personal opinion. Though, again, there is some stipulations like the battery life and maybe requiring a little bit of tinkering with some games that need to be upkept in certain ways. And again, it is running on Linux, which not a lot of people seem to like. But at this point, this right here is literally just pick up and play. Pick up and play to the point of where I have handed this to children who are super, super young, going into elementary school, and they have used this thing and enjoyed it flawlessly, without any issues, without any hiccups, without any drops in frame rates, and looking at it fantastically. And with the streaming example, I don't think you can actually fully set this up to be like a fully working desktop streaming device. But if you want to run maybe a second PC setup, i.e., you plug the Steam Deck into your computer, and you have a secondary PC just for streaming or just for a video game or something like that, which I think the Steam Deck can handle just streaming for while it's plugged in, at the very least, to have it as like a second computer for a 2-computer setup. That might actually work, and I'm not sure if it will. I might need to run experiments on that. Probably not, but in all honesty, I personally think that the Steam Deck itself is a fantastic buy to anyone looking into at least bringing some of their games on the go if they're tired of lugging around maybe a much heavier laptop, or if they just have an extensive library, or heck, even wanted to get into emulation, like myself. I'm going to end it off with a really funny story where I said to a friend that he says, oh, well, it's using Linux. Why? But you're using a lot of Windows stuff. And I literally told him to his face, I will switch everything over to Linux just to be certain that I can play this Steam Deck, because I wanted it that badly, and because it was just that good in my personal opinion. And I still stand by that. And this here, the Steam Deck that I'm holding in my hands, which you can't see, is 100% worth the buy, in my personal opinion. Anyway, guys, that's the video. I wanted to bring out a little bit more positivity into the world, and I just wanted to talk about this because as of this time, I had to call in sick for work. It's not COVID, I assure you. I am, as you can kind of tell by my voice, it was more or less just very, very minorly, but it went away pretty soon within the day, so I don't think it was much of anything. But I'm still having to be in quarantine for another 24 hours, so I will get back to it at another point. But getting more back into the swing of things, personally, I will say this right here is good, and I'm waffling on again. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. My name is GamePango21, and a peace off.
You wanna get away, you better get in line. Won't go another day of wasting any time. I've got a lot to say.